talking to that, but we'll read things over here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Give the microphone.
we're live. Yes, I do.
We're going live.
Woohoo! Let us know if you can hear us. Well, we're stoked to be here. Oh, let me move that. There we go. What's up, Austin?
Dude.
Sorry for the delay in getting things set up, but we're here now.
Yeah, we're here. Did not. Yeah, it's a good day.
It's a good day.
Excited to be here.
Yes.
So let's go with that. Yeah.
We have a couple housekeeping items that we can talk about first because we've been working on this summer to make the podcast even better.
Let's do it.
As you can see, we are live, right? So normally we'd be doing our podcasts and then we would edit them and put them on whatever platform you choose to listen to our podcast on.
Right.
But we've decided to kick it up a notch and do some YouTube live so we can engage our audience a little bit more. If you guys have questions, we can talk about them. But we're really excited for the season and kind of what this can do for us.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. You know, you may notice we are going through a little bit of a name change as well. So if anyone is following that has been following us on our podcast for the last 2 years, we've been Into the Pine and Between Two Skis. We did a little just slight name change, and I want to explain quickly the reasons why, and then we'll get into what we want to talk about today and see if there's any questions. But really, right now, we are now the Between Two Slopes podcast, right? Not a big change, a small change, but really the whole purpose of this rebranding is to bring in and not exclude some of our favorite fans that are snowboarders.
right.
So Trent and I both have had vast experiences and been talking a lot about skis in our past. But we've also, I've been out on snowboarding quite a bit. I love it. It's fun. One of my favorite things to sell in the shops was snowboards.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make sure that we weren't skipping over a whole, group of people that wanted, enjoy the mountain too.
Yeah.
So
and they want to capitalize on their days on the mountain, right? That's
exactly
what we're here for. So cool name change. We're excited about it. We've also are going to be posting more YouTube videos in general. So get excited for those as well. So we want to make our podcast more of a conversation, and we want to make our YouTube videos more of the educational piece. That way, there were certain things that we talked about that were kind of high level,
definitely
ski items, right? And we want those to be easier understood, and that can be done through videos and less through podcasting.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Yeah.
We can actually do a little more visuals for you, especially when getting into technicals. But we're also really excited to, talk a little bit more about the beginner skier level as well. So
yeah. And we've got some people in the chat, or just one for now, but the Cake Maven's excited. As we get started and get rolling, we might not be able to check the chat a ton. But if we don't get to your question, just leave it in a comment, and we'd love to either make a video about it later or address it in another podcast. Definitely. So what did you want to talk about today?
Yeah. So today we are going to start off just by talking about probably one of our most commonly asked questions, and the question I at least personally get asked a lot just through day-to-day activities and at work, which is how to choose the right ski for you, right? And we're going to kick it off by even starting with kids. There is a big group of people. I know my brother is one who's even asked me this year. He's like, hey, I want to get my son Cooper up snowboarding. This is Cooper's future board that I have set aside for him, but it's still a little big for him. So he's asking, I want to get Cooper, I want to get Kyler, the 2-year-old up snowboarding. What age can we start? What's the right gear can we get? How do I choose the right size for them? And when it comes to kids gear specifically, there's so many options. You can buy, you can rent, you can buy new, you can buy used. You can borrow from a friend, and there's just some nitpicky stuff in there that really we want to address, which is like how to get the right sizing, because sizing does matter to make sure that they can learn properly. But you also want to get like the best bang for your bucks, right? You don't want to be buying skis every year if you want to buy.
Right.
So
let's dive into that. I kind of just went through this whole thing with my daughter. She'll be 3 in November. We bought her first pair of skis, and we ended up buying used and not renting. And not to say that renting is a bad option, but when you are renting skis, the things that you can look at is, is my kid growing really, really fast? Right? Or is my kid's ability level growing really fast? Right? Because if you're purchasing a beginner ski for, let's say, like a 7-year-old, but they're progressing at a great rate, then like you want to be able to kick them up to that next ski. So renting would make more sense in that scenario. Me with my 3-year-old, though, it made sense to buy because I can teach her, and then her brother, my 1-year-old, will be right behind her and can use that same pair of skis, right? So I'm hoping to get a couple seasons out of this one pair of skis for my daughter, and then a couple seasons for my son. And that goes into what size to buy, right?
Yeah. Well, Trent, since you literally just went through this experience and what we want to talk about, let's break that down a little bit more for our listeners, our viewers, so that they can kind of understand the pros and cons, because, everyone's got their own unique situation. And like you said, one of your pros to buying was that you could also hand it down, right? Because you have more than one child that you could use the skis for. Right. So let's go over, and I'll ask you some questions so you can help answer, what are the pros and cons for renting skis? And if we do want to go for renting, do we do a daily rental or a season rental, and maybe what to look for? Right.
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, if you're looking at daily rental versus season rental, we'll start there. Season rentals are great, but you need to get up there like at least 6 times for the daily rental or for the season rental to outweigh the daily rental in value. And that's simply because, it's going to be more for the same ski, but you get to keep it the whole season.
And just cost of the math, right?
Exactly.
How much does it cost to rent for the season versus daily?
Normally a daily rental could be, if you're talking like low tier daily rental for a kid, it could be like $25, which is decent, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're getting like some of the higher tier, you could get up to $50 for a day. But that just depends on the shop and the equipment that they have. Season rentals are usually the exact same equipment, maybe a little bit older of a model, but they are still great skis. Usually they have some packages in between. And so then you just got to ask yourself and know your kid well enough to say, how many times are we really going to go up? Right? Because if your kid hates the cold or doesn't want to be out very long, right, and you don't see yourself being able to make time to get up to the mountain, 6 times a season, then a daily rental would be a great option, right? So yeah.
And so the season rental, to help clarify too, when you're talking the cost of a season rental, you're usually going to average like your low cost is like $100 for the season. And this is going to be just like the oldest equipment that you can get, right? And it can get up to a couple $100s, right? Now, when we talk about kids skis, I'm talking anywhere from like what kids usually start 2 or 3, so I'm going to say from 2 or 3 years old up to like 16 years old, right? Now, the junior level skis, usually the kid is capping those around 12 or 13. Okay. So once you're hitting about that 14, 15 age, and the ski shops don't really go off age, they go off weight and height and your skiing ability. Once you get over that age, you're usually into more of an adult range ski, which is where you're in that couple $100s for a season rental because you're having to pay the adult prices. Right. So just to help give a little bit of clarification there. I want to talk a little bit about like the young skier level. So 2 to like 10 years old. Okay. We're talking the junior level skis that are being rented $20, $30, $40 a day for your daily rentals, and usually $100 to $200 for a season rental, right? What do you get with that rental? What is the ski? What are the pros of getting one of those skis, and how would it vary if you wanted to buy your own ski?
Right. So first off, the biggest thing that's going to be different is your base material, right? On a rental kids junior ski, the base material is called extruded base. And what that means is it's just really hard plastic. It doesn't really absorb any wax. It doesn't really do much. but it can take a beating, right? And so that's really great because you're going to be hitting a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
And then
usually causes for a cheaper price, right?
Absolutely.
So benefit really for someone who hasn't skied much before. You're just talking the quality of what you're getting underneath is not the highest quality, which is benefit to your checkbook,
Yes.
right? And it's not going to hurt the skier's learning ability either.
And they're not usually getting up to high speeds or making really hard turns, so they're not going to notice.
Yeah, majority kid skis are going to have that same base material.
Yeah. The other huge thing is the cores to the skis are usually made out of foam.
Yes.
Right. That is a big, big thing to consider when you're looking at renting or buying a kid ski, and will be the significant jump in price. Is if you're getting a wood core ski, it's going to behave more like an adult ski. Whereas if you get a foam ski, it's going to be a little more flimsy, a little more flexible, right? They can still be solid, but there's not going to be anything really special about them.
Right. I love that you bring that up. I really wanted to speak to that, and I'm going to kind of hit the same point for snowboards. Like my brothers asked about snowboards. When you're looking at junior snowboards, prices are really the same. There's not a big difference in the pricing, but you do bring up a good point. And this is where if you're looking to buy, you get a little more options, and it's really the core of the ski. When you're skiing on something like most junior snowboards and junior skis, they are foam cored skis and boards, right? And the foam can cause really just different issues as far as once that kid gets to like a certain skiing ability, that can just make it harder for them to progress even further, right? Once they start skiing over like a blue level, you want to start looking at getting your kid into something a bit stiffer, a bit stronger to help them progress and go a little bit more. Right. So like this board I have set aside here, so it's for my nephew. This is actually an original Burton board from, I think it's 93. And I say original Burton back when Jake Burton actually was running Burton snowboards. Right. And this is designed with a wood core in it. It was designed as a youth/women's trick board. And really just due to the size of it, it's also a directional snowboard, which we get into. We'll talk about another time because you can get into a whole side subject with directional boards versus twin boards and whatnot. But it's just a more advanced level of a snowboard that someone might want to use when they're actually progressing.
Yeah.
Right. So
someone just asked us a decent question. They said, is 28 still considered a young skier level if you've barely ever skied like me? So I think this raises a really great question. Austin and I used to have people come in the shop and say, a kid ski is cheaper. Why can't I just buy a kid ski?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had people come in that are under 5 foot tall that are, 40 years old, and, they're going to fit mostly the kid skis and whatnot.
Right.
So go ahead.
But the real problem with that, it really goes back to that foam core, right? So if you are, you think you're not really that good, or you think you can fit into a kid ski, you're going to max out that ski so much faster than if you were to get an adult ski. And it's going to be so much harder to progress on a kid ski because it's not going to give you the energy back that you were considering. So if you're looking at cost and sizing and you think you can size into a kid ski, just don't.
Yeah. And I love this question to also just kind of emphasize that when we talk about skier level, it's also different than age, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people do wonder about that when they say, I'm 30 years old, or I'm 16 years old, or whatever, and I'm a beginner skier. So where does that put me? Right. When we talk about skier level, you really just start with 1, 2, and 3. 1 being a beginner skier, 2 being intermediate, and 3 advanced, right? There are some subcategories, and most of this with skiing has to do with setting your DIN setting on your bindings to just allow you to release when you crash.
Yep.
Right. With snowboards, that's not even a thing. So no one even worries about it. They just say, hey, when it comes to if I'm a young skier or just new to skiing or snowboarding, that's when we start looking into size differences, right? Which I think is a great segment to hop into. Let's talk briefly about, benefits of buying. I guess actually we've kind of hit the benefits of buying new and
Yeah.
used skis here. Let's talk a little bit about how you would size a ski for yourself as an adult and for a kid.
Yeah. So let's talk kids first. So my daughter, she's really tall for a 3-year-old. So I actually sized the ski to be a little big on her. Normally, a beginner level, you want to hit about the chin. Intermediate is like in between your eyes, the bridge of your nose, and then advanced is, forehead to preference.
And
right?
that's for anyone,
For anyone,
not just kids.
not just kids, anyone. But when it comes to kids, I err on the side of too big always. And the reason that is because, like the difference between a ski hitting my daughter here and hitting here isn't huge. And that's something that we can work through. But if I am getting her a ski that's hitting her at the beginner level, next year, there's no way that she is going to be able to ride that ski. Whereas if it's hitting her a little high and then she grows, now it's hitting her at that beginner level, I can get another season out of that ski,
Definitely.
So the mindset there is a little different. I usually tell people to go bigger when their kid is learning and growing. Now for you personally, or as an adult, you want to ask yourself, how often am I going? I hate selling beginner skis to beginner adults because they will quickly grow out of that ski.
Yep.
Whereas if I could get them like a beginner to intermediate ski, then they can progress and grow into that ski a little bit and then really love it as they become proficient.
Definitely. I'd say, so I want to speak a little bit to that. Especially for kids, like you said, I love that you bring that up, sizing a little bit up. Now, with kids, their faces, their body, everything's a little different. It's a little bit smaller, right?
Mhm.
So you're going to be choosing in 10 centimeter lengths differences, right? So like you said, if you're getting something that's right underneath the nose, the next level down is probably going to be down at like neck level for them, right?
Yep.
It's going to be slightly too short. So you're erring on, do I go too short or slightly bigger than that general rule we have as underneath the chin?
Yeah.
And that's why we say go just a little bit bigger in that sense. Now, if you're going up and it's their absolute first time and you're renting for the day, you could totally do the shorter
Yeah,
ski.
just get exact if that's the case.
Yeah. And really the idea here is that shorter skis are easier to turn,
Yep.
right? And that's why we have this rule of beginner, intermediate, advanced going up in length. Now, the longer you go, the faster you can generally ski at speed, having like more stability.
Yeah, more control.
Right. So that middle length for a kid usually there isn't as big of a difference for them when we're talking just a few centimeters, especially when we're talking about just erring on the slightly bigger side.
Yeah. Well, so now let me ask you, Austin's more of a snowboard aficionado than myself. Where do you measure a kid's board? How would you measure that out?
That's a great question. With a kid's board, I would do it actually a bit different. With snowboards, I like to go slightly shorter. And the reason being is snowboards obviously are a bit wider. There's a bit more material and it takes a bit more leverage to start to put them on the edge, right? It's going to take a second to learn that turning radius. So going longer, you're not going to really get any benefit besides it's going to be harder to turn. And this is the same for kids and adults, right? You don't necessarily need to go too short. And the sizing of this is not the same as skis. So I'll speak to that real quick. When I size a snowboard, the tallest I like to go, especially for a beginner, is that board hitting you like right at the chin level. I usually like to get the board hitting right about like where your collarbone is going to hit. Even you can go kind of like armpit level for beginners, right? People that are more advanced may want to go higher. Now, like I said, the benefits of that, of going longer, is really just getting stability at higher speeds. I know plenty of advanced snowboarders that end up snowboarding even shorter than like the recommended beginner ski or beginner snowboard, right? Because it just gives you more turning ability. They like to go play in the park and throw different things around, and maybe they want to work on some spins, right? So you get a bit more variety when choosing for like a snowboard as far as what length is concerned. So looks like we have some questions or some comments that popped up.
So we've got one that says, wow, new knowledge to me. Maybe I will have to try to go skiing again with adult skis as they will last longer.
Yeah.
Super true, super valid.
Yeah.
And then we've got, maybe you covered this earlier, I'm a little late. What age / slash height slash weight, etc., is someone considered an adult to get normal skis and boards?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's something I definitely want to speak to. And I also want to speak to that first comment real quick before I hop into the weight, height, and age and whatnot.
Right.
With that first comment talking about, trying it again as an adult ski. And I want to read it real quick. Will you read it again one more time?
Of course I will.
Yep.
She said, wow, new knowledge to me. Maybe I will have to try going skiing again with an adult ski as they will last longer.
Yeah, definitely. So what I wanted to speak to, because that kind of refreshes it for me,
totally.
what I wanted to speak to with that is really going as an adult and on an adult ski, you're going to notice a lot of benefit to having not being on that like foam core,
yep.
right? Especially because you're just going to get a lot more feedback. You're going to be able to ski when you're feeling like out of control going over bumps or crud or snow that's kind of stiff. You're going to feel a lot more stable. And that's because of that wood core being able to push a little bit harder into the snow. And it's going to be a little bit wider now that you're on adult skis. Kid skis are tiny underfoot. Right. So having that little extra width gives you some more stability. So as an adult, there's nothing wrong with being a beginner and going and trying again. You didn't miss like your opportunity. If anything, you could progress just as fast, if not quicker, than you would have as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The benefits of starting early is just that you get used to it so quick that when you're an adult and a little more daring, you already have the basics down. Right.
And one thing I also want to speak to is consistency, right? Like if it was my first season skiing and I was all in and I bought a season pass and I was going to go get a season rental, I would strongly consider buying a ski, even if it was a used ski, right? And that's because I am going to grow, progress, and be more consistent on a ski that's mine, and I can see that, and a ski that I can carry over year to year, than a rental ski that I get for one season, and then next season I have a totally different ski.
Right. You have to relearn how that feel is.
Exactly.
It changes a little bit from brand or different sizing of skis.
So there are some things to consider, right? If you're on if you're an adult and you're on like your third season of season rentals, strongly consider buying. You'll just progress at a lot faster rate.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about like, what's the cap? When do I move from a kid ski to an adult ski, or for my kids, how long do I have to be able to rent by the junior size, right? As far as age limit goes, I'll speak to that first. It is a very broad, like it's not like an exact date. It's not like, okay, you hit 15, 16, you're done, right? I'd say age is usually between 14 and 16. A big point is really your level and your ability. So how hard you're skiing or snowboarding. That's going to determine how fast you move from a junior level ski into an adult ski at that age. Anyone over 16 or, I'd say over 16, you shouldn't be riding a junior ski.
Yep.
Right. And this is due to that foam core. It is not strong enough. You can snap a kid ski like that. That's foam core on your knee.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that's holding it together are the metal edges, right? That's really that and some carbon fiber and plastics on the top sheet.
Yeah,
so
not much. Like if there's a really good 14-year-old, right, and he's on a foam pair of skis and he hits a kicker because he's, having fun.
Yeah.
He'll bust that ski eventually. Like,
oh yeah, I've seen it.
He's done. Like it's done.
So that's a really big factor is why we mentioned that is your skiing ability really determines what kind of ski you want to be on, right? So 14 to 16 is really when I hit like that hard line is like no one over 16 should be on a junior ski, because once you're over that age, you are skiing, even if you're a beginner, you are skiing more aggressively than most junior kids, okay? And it's due to your weight, height, and the leverage, and also your boot, using an adult boot. This also goes into play with what bindings you're going to have on junior level skis and to actually fit, because the binding uses a shorter screw that's easier to rip out on a foam core, so it'll just rip like crazy.
Right.
So there's kind of my hit for age limit and just my hard push on why an adult shouldn't consider a junior ski.
Yeah.
I might be a little passionate about that because I've had to argue it like several times to people.
On the flip side, a story that comes to mind is when Austin and I were at our Fort Union shop together, there was a guy, a dad, he came in and he was insistent that his son was good enough to ride an adult women's ski, right? Because women's skis come in shorter lengths. So he wanted to buy a Santa Ana. And I was really cautious about selling him one because, a Santa Ana is heavy, it really needs a strong skier to control. And I was like, he brought in his 12-year-old and I was like, this kid's not very big. And so I was really worried. And as I got talking to him more, they were hitting some serious terrain and they were hitting speeds that they wanted more stability, right? And so you better than even your tech does, right? So you can talk to your tech and they might think they know what's best for you. But at the end of the day, you know what's best for you. And getting like expert advice to talk through some of these scenarios is solid, but they're not skiing with you,
Yeah.
So get what's best for you and get some professional opinions, but
definitely.
So
why don't you hit real quick too, a little bit about height and weight as far as for a kid. Okay. Because we kind of covered the age area as far as when you should level up for a junior skier. But what about, a kid that's 13? We'll talk a little bit about that skier level. Yeah. Like about what height and weight would max out on most kids' gear?
That's a really great question. And it can vary by gear, but usually once your kid is like 120 to 130 pounds, usually they're going to be maxing out gear. And, that looks different for different ages for different people. But once again, it goes back to that foam core. If at 130 pounds, if you hit a jump with a foam core ski, you're going to notice real quick, right?
Yep.
Now, when it comes to height, you can get rental skis up to 170, right? So that's a little different.
I mean, junior skis usually cap about 140.
Yeah. So the 170 would be like, you're right, it's more into the adult ski, but 140 centimeters, that's like 5 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
Roughly somewhere around there. So once you're getting above 5 feet, consider jumping up.
Yep. That sounds about right. We usually talk about 4'11" is kind of like the cap point on height. You hit it right on the nose from what I would say too, as far as 120 pounds is where I usually max a weight on junior skis. Now you've got a kid that's like 5'1" and 120 pounds and they are skiing for their first time ever. They can ride a junior ski and be fine, right? Yeah. Because their skier ability is still at the very bottom range. It's okay. But what they wanted to do a season rental and do more, I would say get them an adult ski.
Yeah.
Right. And this will help them with learning, because what's going to happen is they're just going to learn faster than the ski can grow with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So that wood core is going to allow them to actually get into a solid carve and to feel that motion of moving edge to edge in the snow. And it's going to hold that edge versus when you're over skiing something, you're going to start noticing you might be leaning over the tip of the ski a lot. You might be chattering the skis through the snow because it just can't handle the speed that you're carving at.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. So I think we've answered that one pretty well. We've got another question. Also, thanks, Richard, for the like. The Cake Maven. Also subscribe and drop a like. The Cake Maven asks, is skiing or snowboarding easier for kids to pick up?
Like one versus the other, or are we thinking kids versus adults?
I'm thinking kids versus adults, but maybe we should head on both.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start with what you want to say first. Kids versus adults. Is it easier for a kid or an adult to pick up skiing?
I think it's easier for kids to pick up skiing, and it's
always easier for a kid to do anything.
And I just feel like it's because they're learning. Their brains are so attuned to learning where they're at right now.
Yep.
They said one versus the other.
Cool.
Okay, great. So, so back to where I was at though.
Yep.
I feel like kids are fearless, right? Yep. They fall down, they'll get back up, whatever. Also, kids are made out of rubber, right? They fall and they'll just like, whatever, here we are. If I
don't know that parents like to think that.
Yeah. Yeah. If I fell as hard as my 3-year-old, I'd be done for the day, And she just gets up and is like, whatever, here we go. So that's one thing. I think kids are just fearless and made of rubber. But
What's the one versus the other?
So skiing versus snowboarding, I really think that skiing is easier to pick up and harder to master. Another thing with kids on snowboards is they're not used to having their feet bound so that if they move one, the other one's going to move too.
Yeah.
Right. Where skiing, you have at least some like independency, right, between legs, where snowboarding is an all new feel.
Yeah.
So sometimes people will teach on skis, and then once they understand edge control, they'll move them to a snowboard. But
yeah, I would agree with that. I would say in general, most people would say that skiing is easier to learn, but harder to master, versus snowboarding can be a little bit more of a learning curve, and can be, once you get it, it's taken like little small steps to getting better and better. Like jumping on a snowboard versus jumping on skis. I feel like jumping on a snowboard is so much easier than trying to jump on a pair of skis, just due to the fact that you're solid attached to both feet versus having your skis one on each side.
Right.
Now, a lot of that comes from an adult perspective. From a kid's perspective, dude, kids can pick anything up. Like, I swear, it really depends on what's more natural for your child or for yourself. People that have skateboarded, or kids that have, gone out, and I know like my brother likes to take his kids out on bikes, and they started on snowboards at like 2, going out in the backyard and just towing around. Once they're just used to that feeling of riding, of being on like a board, the turning isn't really a problem. They can pick that up pretty quick. It is a little harder, and I think it's harder to teach. Snowboarding is where like the trick is.
Right.
With kids and skiing, you can do a lot with first starting by skiing with your kids in between your legs. You can ride in pizza while you help correct them and teach them how to ride in pizza. Right. And pizza, for anyone that doesn't know, are tips of the skis pointing inward. Right. And you can get the edgy wedgies that attach to the tips and make it a little bit easier for them to just understand that motion of going from French fry, straightforward skis, to go faster to pizza, right? And then start initiating the turns. Snowboarding can be a little harder to do that, right? It is, if you're somebody who grew up snowboarding or knows it really well, you have your own method of teaching it. But we can, and I actually really want to get into talking a little bit more. If anyone's ever interested, drop a like or a comment on if you want to learn how to teach your kids more about how to ski and how to snowboard, right? Because you can snowboard or ski and have your kid snowboarding, and you can have them do the same thing in between the legs to help teach them, right? But especially if you're like, hey, I'm an adult that's snowboarding and I'm teaching my kid how to snowboard, what are the best methods? There are some tips and tricks. I don't want to get too heavy into it, right? Because I want to leave my answer as I would say skiing is a little bit easier to learn. However, skiing versus snowboarding, your kid could do either one.
Right.
I wouldn't say you can't do one of them.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Usually sizing is the hardest part, and you can find skis easier than you can find snowboards to fit their size.
Right. Okay, so we're starting to, come to an end here. Pizza for life. We're starting to come to an end here, but is there anything that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Really, I just want to emphasize and thank you all the viewers for joining us tonight. It's been fun. This is our first live session for anyone that had joined, and it's been really fun. I mean, I love answering questions. This format. Right? Yeah, it's been great to just help answer some questions for people. If you do have something that you want to talk about, like I said, more about kids gear. I mean, I feel like Trent and I have a lot of knowledge that it's easy for us to kind of like vomit out, if you will.
Right.
And I really want to cater to what you want to know.
Right. Exactly. Because like we could come up with whatever and we'll try to like have an outline, but we'd love to just talk with you guys and answer any questions that you have. And maybe like we even talked about diving into adult skis picking. We were going to potentially do that more. So, next time, if you guys have any questions along those lines or totally out of left field, like just leave a comment and we'd love to, make sure that you guys are capitalizing on your days on the mountain.
Definitely. I'd love to talk a little more about adult gear too.
Yes.
That's where we start to have a lot of fun. And it's fun to talk about that for kids as far as too, even that like next step up ski. Right. What do I get? What are the benefits, and where can I go on the mountain with them? Right. That's a really fun time, to get out of that beginner phase. So Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. We're very, very excited for the future of Between Two Slopes, and we look forward to chatting with you all next time.
Yes. And we'll journey with you, not into the pine anymore,
Right?
but between two slopes.
Yes.
All right. You guys have a good one.